I mean, how cool was that? Shamina and Lily, that was amazing. All right. So, lovely moment. They're just setting up, you know, getting the table ready. I want a nice throne, some grapes and stuff ready just there. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I am really honored for this moment, but can you welcome to the stage Mr. Trevor Noah. Don't leave me hanging, Trevor. Hold on. Trevor's a star, you know what I mean? He comes in his own time. It'll be cool. He's back there. I have seen him. Trust me, he's there. I'll just chill out, have a seat, just have a little chat. Any questions you'd like to ask, you know? Anything you need to know about Britain and what did that guy say about British industry? Wolfgang? Bring him back out here. We'll have a chat. Come on. Bro. Come on. Yes, Trevor.
Making you sweat.
I'm sweating. I'm really super excited to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you for taking time out in your busy schedule to be here.
Thank you.
Let's chat, man. Let's chat. So, Trevor, what's your driving force, man? What makes you tick, and how has that been influenced by your childhood and growing up in South Africa?
Oh, it's interesting. I've always felt like my driving force is a combination of people and learning. You know, I think those are the two things that from a very young age I was imbued with. I always found my joy and my purpose and my passion in that, you know, and growing up in South Africa, you know, one key element of African culture I always find is that there's always a wonderful mix of the people you'll meet and then the learnings that you will experience because of them, you know, and so that's honestly what drives me. It's as simple as that. And I find the more people I meet, the more I want to learn. The more I learn, the more I want to help people, meet new people, create new experiences because of those people. And that's what I do with my foundation. That's what I try and do with my life. That's a lot of what stand-up comedy is, you know, it's spending time somewhere, getting to know the people, trying to synthesize that experience, and then seeing if I can create something that brings people together.
And, you know, how have you used that? I mean, the big theme of today is about inclusive growth. You know, how have you been able to use that, and what's your thought on inclusive growth? You know, taking us all in that direction together.
Well, I think the first thing that I found was oftentimes when people were having these conversations in and around inclusive growth or inclusivity in any way was people often made it seem like it was a charity venture. They made it seem like it was a nice thing to do. They made it seem, whereas I never understood how, you know, people who had these growth mindsets never looked at the fact that they were neglecting so much of a market, a base, a potential space to grow in. It always didn't make sense to me, you know? And so when I think of inclusive growth, oftentimes I think of complete growth.
Yes.
Why would you not want to grow everywhere that you can grow in the most sustainable ways possible? Why would you only want to grow in one part or another? You know, I would always challenge people when I meet them. People will be proud, like, you know, capitalists and business people and all of this. And I would say to them, well, if you see somebody who's not part of a market, then don't you think of that as a failing? And don't you think of that as an opportunity? You know, anyone who can't participate in banking, anyone who can't participate in education, anyone who can't participate, that's your system that is now failing, and more importantly, it's somebody who can't participate in the market that you love so much, that free market that you love. And so I think people take for granted oftentimes how growth, even when you look at that word, is something that you actively need to create, you know, and it comes in stages, you know. So if you think of growth, there's the moment where you have to plant the seed. There's the moment where the seed is doing nothing for all intents and purposes. You're watering it, you're nurturing the soil that it exists within, and then it sprouts, and then it grows, and still you're putting in more effort than you may be getting out of it. But at some point, you reap the rewards of that. And I think somewhere along the line, people have forgotten that there's a period of growth that requires what seems like no return, when in fact that is the most important part of growth, because at some point, you know, you get these giant trees that have been planted a generation before, and you forget that somebody just had the foresight to grow them.
It's called investment, isn't it?
It's
Investing
exactly.
in people's futures. And I, coming from a sporting background, you know, it always surprises me when I come out into the everyday world, because our job is to allow everyone to be the best they possibly can be. You know, it's no point in us having a team where we have any weak links, because people are going to exploit that. And I don't mean weak links as in people who are not good enough, but people who we don't give the opportunity to be the best they can be. You know, myself growing up, one of the things I learned very quickly is that I grew up with a disability, and being black, I grew up in a world that wasn't built for me. I grew up in a world that wasn't set up for me, and that I was going to have to challenge people every day in order to progress. But what I also loved about it is I met incredible enablers, people out there in the world who believed in me before I believed in myself.
Right. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, that's this thing about inclusive growth. We have to find that tribe, and we have to find these enablers so we can spread that word, get it out there.
I think we also take for granted how much innovation, growth, and just like a world expanding possibility we can experience when we think we are catering to others. You know, some of my favorite conversations I've had have been with disability advocates who have shown me how much, you know, currently able-bodied people will benefit from things that everybody takes for granted. You know, so you live in a world with stairs. You don't realize you live in a world with stairs until somebody with a wheelchair comes along and says, "Hey, there's no ramp here."
What's this fixation you able-bodied people have with stairs? it drives me mad. You know, like they say the truth will set you free. I say a ramp and a good lift will set you free, brother.
But you see, and that's exactly it. You look at how many of those innovations have now benefited people who initially would have been against them, because they would have gone, "Oh, why are we doing this for? Oh man, it's just for a few people." It's just, and then you look at ramps today. Most of the people using the ramps are people who initially were like, "Oh, I don't know if we need them."
Oh, I'm a proper snob about this. When I see any of you good old-fashioned two-leggers on a ramp, I'm like, "Get off that ramp, man! That's mine. I fought hard for that ramp. Come on."
And so I think we see that in every sphere. We take for granted how much we can all grow, inclusively grow, if we cater to those who live in a world that hasn't catered to them. And it's not about good guys and bad guys. It's not about what it's blinders. You know, oftentimes you will create for yourself, and that's natural. And so I think what we always have to do is look at who doesn't have the opportunity to grow for themselves, and then try and give them the opportunity to grow for themselves. And I think that's the key thing that I've learned even in our foundation is not prescribing, it's listening. It's saying to groups of people, you know, on the African continent for a long time, people have told Africans how they should do. They've told Africans how they should have their money, how they should grow, how they should, not realizing that there's thousands of years of knowledge contained within the continent.
You know what we are doing, though. Come on.
And people don't get that. They go, you know, it's like if you know your history, you know that it's people who were interrupted in their growth, interrupted in their knowledge, interrupted in what they were doing. And so essentially what you're trying to do is now just give people the tools to have that ramp to get to a place where they were already trying to get to, and were only impeded by the fact that somebody put stairs for themselves.
Exactly. I'm conscious of time here, but no, round of applause, please. What part do you think technology and education is going to play in this inclusive growth?
Well, I think we're on the precipice of something truly amazing, especially when you look at tech through the lens of AI and what it can do.
Does
and I think
AI scare you?
No, I honestly it doesn't. It doesn't. But
I could be AI right now, you know.
You see, you don't scare me at all. I think, you know what it is for me? It's I've always been a futurist, and I've always loved technology. And this was growing up in a world where oftentimes I didn't have access to it. But I saw what changes it created in my world and in my life. My mother learned how to use a typewriter when they weren't ubiquitous, and then they grew over time, and then it was a computer, etc. I think when we think of technology and education, I'm always thrown by the fact that we separate the two. It doesn't make sense to me. We go like technology and education. No, it's just education. How can you educate somebody apart from the technologies that are available at the time? That makes absolutely no sense to me. A pen is technology. We just don't think of it as such. Yeah. You know, a book is a technology. We don't think of it as such, but it is. We've just created this finite definition of what technology is. And so for me, I think if you are educating anybody, you should educate them to be able and capable in the world that they're going to need to exist in. And you know, you look at how education in so many places in the United States and many places around the world hasn't evolved from the Industrial Revolution. You know, children are still being taught to live in a world that no longer exists. And so I think when we think about that, I think we shouldn't separate them at all. We should always ask ourselves, what is the world we are aiming to live in? What do you need to be able to live in that world? Are we then empowering and educating people accordingly? And when we look at things like AI, you always have to look at the downsides. You always have to look at, with any technology, you always have to look at how it can be misused, how it can be abused, etc. However, we are now on the precipice of a moment in time where the barrier to being able to using that technology is going to come way down. And so now a graphic designer will be somebody who has the imagination to know how to create an image with the help of AI, as opposed to somebody who could afford to go to the school that then gave them the accreditation to learn that.
Wealth is will no longer become the
hopefully. That's the key thing, is the hopefully part of it. And then how do we create an equitable pipeline for people in Africa? And that's where you see like broadband around the world, giving people access to a fast enough connection to be able to use these tools, you know, not making it a luxury anymore. And you see the difference that's made just on the smallest level. Look at the cell phone. You know, you look at how the cell phone and mobile networks around the world have completely changed the face of the developing world, as we call it, because people are banked in a way that they weren't before. People can communicate in a way that they couldn't before. And now if we implement AI correctly, people will have access to an information that they wouldn't have had before. And I think that could hopefully create the slingshot that we need to provide like a little, you know, a catalyst that jumps not just Africa, but every developing part of the world forward.
On that note of hope, Trevor, listen, man, thank you so much.
Thank you.
To be continued.
Definitely, definitely.
To be continued.
It's short but sweet, but I really want to